Hi everybody, welcome back. So the last time my wife made soup, she made way too much, wouldn't let me can it, and we ended up throwing about half the soup out. So now I don't let my wife make soup at all anymore, which I suspect was part of her initial plan. So typically what I do when I make soup, I intentionally make quite a bit with the intention of canning everything that's left over. Today what we're going to do is we're going to make some split pea soup, go through the process of actually canning it. This will allow us to use some of our ingredients that we may have grown ourselves or some of our preparations that we put back when we actually need them. So there's two main options when we're making split pea soup. You can either make it with or without meat. Typically what you're going to use for meat inside split pea soup is going to be ham. So I've already cooked my ham and we've already enjoyed a nice ham dinner. And what we're going to need for this recipe is going to be the leftover ham bone. We don't need to completely clean that ham off because once we boil the ham, it's going to make it really easy for us to pull the meat off that bone. Now, for myself, what I'll typically do is I'll boil that bone for between 1.5 and 2 hours to make sure that we're getting all the benefit from boiling the bones. Something you can also do is if you don't want to make the soup right away, you can put those bones into a bag, put them in your freezer until you're actually ready to make the soup. Once you're ready to make the soup, you can then take them out, put them in the pot, and then boil them at that time as well. Now, at the same time that I'm making my broth, I'm going to start to get some of my other ingredients together as well. The recipe that I'm using today calls for 1 pound of split peas, which is approximately 2¼ cups. If you're buying a bag of peas, typically it'll come in 1 pound bags. Now, the bag that I'm using right now is in a jar because the bag's already been opened. I do have some additional bags downstairs, so off camera, because I didn't have enough, I added some more split peas in to make sure that we had that full 2¼ cups or approximately 1 pound. While I'm getting the carrots ready to go into the pot, let's talk about really quickly on how we're actually going to prepare the split pea soup. So me personally, to save a little bit of time, I'm going to cook my peas in a pressure cooker. So when I'm cooking that in a pressure cooker, I can put everything all in at the same time, cook everything all at once, and it takes about 20 minutes in the pressure cooker. Our other option is what we can do is we can rinse off all of our split peas, let them soak for a while. Once they start absorbing the water, put them into the pot, boil the pot, and that takes approximately about 3 hours for that to happen. So just for time's sake, I'm going to cook it a little bit more efficiently inside the pressure cooker. What we'll do is we'll wash all of our carrots off and then we'll peel them. Once we have our carrots peeled, we'll put all that into our compost bin so that we can take that outside and put that into our garden later on in the year. Now, for this recipe, what we're going to do is we're going to use 4 large carrots. We'll then cut either end off of the carrots and then slice them up, putting them into the pot. Next, we'll dice up 2 medium-sized onions and we'll throw those in the pot as well. Now our ham broth's been cooking for about an hour and a half, so what we'll do is we'll strain off that water. Once we got all the water strained off, we'll then take a couple of minutes, get all the meat off the bone. Now I put in about 2.5 cups of ham altogether, so I didn't quite have that much left on the bone. So what I did is once I had it all the meat processed off the bone, I then added some of the leftover meat from our ham dinner that we had the other night. Once we have everything all ready and in the pot, what we'll do is we'll turn our pressure cooker on and we'll set that for 20 minutes. The easiest way I found to clean the jars is by using a chemical cleaner. The one that I use is called Aseptox, and this can be purchased at any wine supply store, and it's a no rinse cleaner. To use the cleaner, all you're going to do is fill up your sink full of water, high enough to cover your jars. Then I typically add 2 tablespoons to the water to act as that disinfectant. I'll then let it sit in the disinfectant for a couple of minutes, and then place it on a drying cloth and let it air dry for a few minutes. Once we're all done cooking, we'll vent the pressure off from the pressure cooker and then take our lid off. Once we have our lid off, we have two options. We can either serve it up for everybody to eat, or we can start the canning process. So it is supper time right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a meal of soup, and then we'll continue with the process and can the rest of the soup. Now that we're all finished for supper, we'll take our sterilized jars and we'll start to fill those up. So we'll take our canning funnel, we'll put that in the top. We want to fill our jars up till they're about an inch from the top so that there is that head space inside the jar so that we can properly can that. Once all of our jars are full, we want to make sure that they are at the appropriate height with that approximately 1 inch of headspace. If we have more or less than that, we should either add or take a little bit out of our jar. Once we've done that, we'll clean off the top of the jar with a piece of paper towel, place our lids on, and screw our rings on as well. Once all of our jars are done, what we'll do is we'll get our pressure canner ready. We'll do that by putting approximately 1 inch of water at the bottom and then add just a little bit of vinegar. What the vinegar is going to do is going to make sure that the jars, when they come out, don't have any spots or anything like that on it, and make sure that those jars are as clean as possible. We'll then place our jars along the bottom and then place our lid on. We then need to set the pressure on our pressure cooker to 15 pounds. We'll continue by lighting our stove and allowing that pressure to build up. Over the next 20 minutes or so, we'll allow that pressure to build up. Once that pressure is built up and it starts to vent at the top, we'll turn our stove down so that it's at an adequate temperature to stay at that pressure, allowing us to use as little propane as possible while we're using the stove. You want to make sure that the area right above where it's venting is clear and that you're not within the path of that steam so you're not getting burnt. For the cook time for this, we're going to let it cook for 60 minutes because we're using pint-sized jars. However, if you're using quart-sized jars, we're going to let it cook for 90 minutes. Once we've reached our 60 minutes of pressure canning, we'll depressurize the can and then turn the stove off. While the pressure is releasing, it can be extremely loud. In fact, my daughter was in the other room and she asked me if I could stop the noise because it was so loud. Once all the pressure is dropped, we'll be able to remove the lid and take our jars out. Keep in mind that these jars are going to be extremely, extremely hot, and the contents of the jars will still be boiling. Once all of our jar lids have snapped, ensuring that they've already sealed and had that time to cool down, we'll then be able to place labels on. The labels that I'm going to use are basically a reusable chalkboard, and the markers that I'm going to use on them are a chalk-based marker, which will come off in the dishwasher. Once we have everything labeled, we can store them for about 1 year. Now, whenever you want soup, all you need to do is pop it in the microwave for a few minutes or put it on your stove top and heat it up. If you have any questions at all about this process, just leave them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button down at the bottom.